Yeah, that was beautiful, but I'll get you back from these beautiful products back to code, I guess, and some more boring things. And my name is Denisa, and I'll present this project where we had like theater directors, developers, philosophers working together and trying to figure out how early in the development of these emergent technologies you can involve the public or stakeholders. So basically my interest is this thing called anticipatory governance. And if I talk about what is my competence and what is my enthusiasm, so competence is more on the science technology studies field. But I'm bored with data, with text. I'm basically using prototyping in order to tackle these like difficult questions. And my natural habitat are really these like maker spaces, hacker spaces, like these groups of people that are trying to touch the technology, trying to push it like the parasites in some new ways, creating new symbiosis and so on. So Maker Fair is something I organized last year in Prague, actually, and it's happening just this weekend. So if you're free, join us. And I was also hanging out with all kinds of do-it-yourself biology and so on people. So this is the project. Back in December, I was trying with some neighbors and family to basically sell Habima Square, which some of you will know, with a pixel of data. We were installing these like red textiles in order to achieve this thing. It's a bit complicated here, the clicking. We were trying to talk to an API that is basically doing analysis of a certain location. It wasn't this location that you see now, but we were trying to create a pixel of data of a red color on that square in order to change the ownership of Habima Square. So I have to say we failed in selling or owning the Habima Square on our alternative blockchain platform, but it was a great exercise, and basically what I'm doing in the last few months is running around the world and building these red pixel dots, because that's the data that Sentinel-2A satellites can detect. And I'm basically asking it to asking the API that will detect this pixel of data to send it to something called Hyperledger, which is one of these blockchain platforms I'm learning to use. And to do this, it's a very simple, you see if people that do JavaScript, it's maybe even not like really nicely written, because yes, I had to learn JavaScript when I was 43 or something. And the important command here is, if you see a red color, then change the owner of that place. So all the smart contracts run on this utopian community, which we call Lithopia, which is, by the way, on a display at Broken Nature in Milan. So if you go there, go to the Czech Pavilion, and you can see us. Basically, we are giving a solution. It's an open source. It's on GitHub for everyone to create this symbolic ownership of a place through almost like an land art type of intervention. You put the red square somewhere, and you can basically create this symbolic ownership. Members of our community, Lithopians we call them, have a dashboard where they can get all kinds of data in real time about the position of the satellite, also instructions how they can start the smart contracts, and basically this Node-RED interface is also good in terms of learning how the blockchain platform works, how it exchanges data, and what is actually going on in the background. I'm using these tools because I'm actually doing workshops where I'm curious how early in the development of these technologies everyone talks about you can involve the general public or any stakeholders. Because I kind of believe that it's important that the solutions are not coming from outside, from Silicon Valley, but it's important to have like more consensus, more participation, and it's simply more fun to try to do something that you only read in the media. Another important reason is that we all talk about this anticipatory design, or design which will predict and make frictionless any type of interaction. Something that will make our life easy, but also enslave us in some way. And there were, of course, a lot of scandals that you notice, and I believe there will be more in the future. Just this last service Faceter, it will be smart contracts built on the blockchain, which will use surveillance data, not the real-time feeds, just like some simplification hashes of faces and so on, where you can make a contract saying if this person enters, call the police, or some insane things like this. So I believe it's important to try to understand these smart contracts as a public. And also, for me, the interesting thing is they have a bit of this ritualistic quality, this belief that something should be automatic, that should happen as a ritual, as basically like, I don't know, contract with the devil would be the metaphor I would use. And there's some really theoretical, obscure interests I have in it. There are many examples where that is happening in the blockchain field. So this is the famous Zcash ritual where they had to destroy that first block in order to prevent misuse of the platform. And this is basically what I'm trying to achieve with this engagement over blockchain technology, in this case Hyperledger, which some people would say, oh, it's a closed platform, but it's an interesting one because it offers you much more flexibility to do the smart contracts, and it doesn't cost anything. So I'm unhappy that we have that regulation always comes after some crisis, that there are all these like push design patterns. I don't want to see users just as passive. I want them to be involved in the early stages of that technology, and I do believe it supports some form of resilience. This is a workshop structure, basically, that I will start to do this month, literally, because I needed ethics approval. And people will basically touch the contracts at the end. This is what Lithopia is. It is a parody of a smart village where Lithopians can use hand gestures or these like red pixels of something to trigger smart contracts, and through that learn how blockchain works. Right now, it is in Milan. It's a movie that we show, basically, with like funny features. The ownership in that place is not based on some cryptocurrency. It's just symbolic. It's based on string of data. So it's a bit like genealogies that you know from places like Yap, where the big coins, when people move somewhere, are not really about numbers, but it's about genealogy of who owned it before and who is owning it after. It's a set of functional prototypes and templates I let people work on, and an interface where they understand how all this communicates. But I don't want to bore you with this. The interesting part which we are trying to do in Lithopia is maybe this. On the level of that code where you see the change of ownership, okay, I have an old slide. I'll just go back to show you the contract here. We are trying to make like an evil contract. So how would you make an evil contract from something that says, just if you see a red color, then change ownership? You can add like new conditions. So one conditions we do, because they're like Lithopians, a condition could be if a person has, in the origin, it has a description like check or whatever, then you cannot sell it. So I'm using these templates in order to push this idea of algorithmic governance and, to some evil ends, basically, in order to also see whether people will understand maybe the dangers of these ideas of automated smart contracts future. But the workshop is much more. It's not just playing with templates and the interface. It's really also a lot about like discussing, learning basically what are the policy issues behind it, what is there. Yeah, we are doing some voting, so we are really simulating, okay, you live in Lithopia, these are the technologies, you have a stakeholder role, what would you do? And then we do the templates, and then at the end we see how the attitude towards blockchain basically changed. And that's it. Thank you.